you go. Somebody asked me once if, where'd you get that theme music? And it's like, I wrote it. And they're like, oh, no, you didn't. And I'm like, yeah, I did. I wrote it, and I played it, and I put it to music. So I might do something with that later if I can. I like to record music. I've got several CDs produced and all that rot, so might do another one. You never know. Okay, so welcome back, you, to the Dwarven Tavern. I am Dr. Jeff Goins, your host, and I'm in a really weird mood, so this is probably going to be pretty interesting. This is a continuance of the Pathfinder 2nd Edition core rules, which I dig more and more every time I crack into it. It goes for $59.99. You can get it at paizo.com/Pathfinder and look it up, or you can find it. I'm sure you can find it elsewhere for discount prices, which is always cool. And we're going to look at the next thing that the last thing we looked at was playing the game, which is kind of important to know if you want to play the game. And I do have to say the one ongoing theme about Pathfinder is them doing what they don't have to do. And what they don't have to do is to provide all of these additional things, like, you know, the idea of playing the game. I've seen quite a few companies, and I can't think of any offhand because I put those out of my mind, who they say, well, if you're not smart enough to get it, you're not smart enough to get it, or they assume that you know things. And I would bet, because I have a master's degree and a PhD in education, and I would bet money on both my degrees that there are some educators working in the background at Paizo, because they know how to make the learning fun. And you know, all the classes that I've ever taught, I've started out laughing. I keep the students laughing, and they leave laughing because of a very wise man. I was learning back in 2009. I was studying Mandarin Chinese, the language. His name was Huang Laoshi. Well, his name wasn't Laoshi. Laoshi is Mandarin for teacher. And he started out laughing, and I learned more in that semester. I took 2 years of Mandarin from him in a single semester, and he taught me a very valuable lesson. He said, you know, you got to laugh if you want to learn. And I thought about it, and I'm like, why is that? And he never really elaborated, but I figured out that, you know, when you don't laugh if you're not relaxed. And if you're not relaxed, you don't learn. So learning is tantamount to relaxing. You can't learn anything. You can memorize the crap out of anything, as tense as hell, but you can't learn it, and there's a difference. I never liked rote memorization. I always preferred critical thinking and learning as a means of whatever. But the amount of fun that they put in this book it's over and above the requirements of what you might expect from a game book. I mean, for crying out loud, this thing is over 617 pages long. You know, I've seen other game books that were, you know, just a tweak over 100 that's supposed to encompass the whole rule. So another huge kudo for Pathfinder. Even though I absolutely hate the Pathfinder Goblin, a good anime to watch is Goblin Slayer, which is the kind of goblins that I grew up with. So that's the ones that I'm sticking to, and I don't think anybody in my gaming group actually likes goblins. Actually, I can't say that because Tammy or Lisa just rolled up a goblin character. But we're playing an orc campaign where Josh is the war boss, and I am a weird boy. Imagine that. So this one is called Chapter 10, and it's called Game Mastering. There are a number of very cool points about this. As Game Master, you can run each session of Pathfinder, providing the link between the players and the world of the game. It's up to you, the Game Master they're talking about, to set the scene as the player characters battle monsters, interact with other people, and explore the world. So yeah, there you go. That's what a Dungeon Master does. It's what a Game Master does. It's what I can't think of any other games that... Because in Traveller, there's a Game Master, and I know Castle Crusades from Troll Lords. Freaking Troll Lords, man. awesome guys. I love them. They put out Castles and Crusades, which is an entirely different series of books. But every game has its own nomenclature for he who oversees things. I always refer to it as Dungeon Master because that's what I am. I'm a Dungeon Master. I work in a basement. So there you have it. So when you take on a role as a Game Master, you'll have the rewarding job of crafting fun experiences for a group of your friends or enemies. Your responsibilities includes telling the story of the group's adventures in a compelling and consistent way. Very important advice, and very true. Fleshing out the world in which the game takes place, emphasizing the fantastical while grounding it enough in the real world to feel believable. So no electric guitars that shoot ice cones of cold when playing Ramones songs. Sorry, that sucked. It was stupid. Entertaining the players and yourself with novel concepts and rewarding creative ideas with interesting outcomes. Also, excellent advice. Preparing for game sessions by building or studying adventures and creating characters and plots. This is something that is largely overlooked by many game masters who just kind of wing it as you go, because I have found that there is a distinct correlation between the amount of preparedness inversely proportionate to the chance you'll ever play the game again. Because I can't even think of how many times that I've gone like freaking over the top with preparations and it just doesn't get played again. I do maps, I do sound effects, soundtracks, roll up actual NPCs and do that thing and then play it once or twice, and then we move on to something else and never get back to it, and then everybody has forgotten where we were, like reading a book and putting it on the shelf for a couple of years and taking it out and realizing there's no bookmark. It's like, the hell. So the preparation is indeed important, because when you immerse your players, and I found a couple of things that a couple of companies have put out, because people are making these tables with their TVs to put their battle maps on. And I think that's wonderful. That's incredibly cool, very creative. And so in a response to that creativeness, companies have put out battle maps where you use your miniature figures, and the screen is animated. It's got lava that rolls with heat waves coming off of it, and it's just cool. It's cool as hell. It's a great time to be alive. I wish I'd had this when I was, back in the 80s, when the maps consisted of graph paper taped together. Improvising the reactions of non-player characters and other forces in the world as players do unexpected things. This is where a basic competence in accents. We have adopted the Cockney accent for orcs because of Warhammer, basically. That's the orcs that we like, right? So when we talk like orcs, we talk like bloody orcs. Get the choppers over there, and so forth. You can have, German shopkeepers who talk like this, and they say, "Oh, that is a very rare scone. This is a bakery. It's not a pawn shop." Or, you can challenge you to a duel as the French chevalier comes in, and so forth and so on. And, you just pick up a couple accents, and it makes it much, much cooler, because the whole idea is immersion. Immerse your players in the game. And when they can actually hear it, and it's back when Lyric and I were talking about soundtracks and putting music into your game, like that adds, drama to things, and it adds immersion. It brings out, and I always hated musicals. Like, I always thought it was dumb as hell for people to be, standing around and all of a sudden they break out into song and dance, and everybody knows the steps and everybody knows the lyrics, and it's just like, And so then when I was getting my undergrad degree, I won a scholarship for writing a musical. It was kind of an enlightening situation, because my professor, who was mentoring me through this process over the summer, said that, and I said, it may be weird that I want to get this scholarship for writing a musical because I freaking hate musicals. And she said, yeah, that's good. She said, that's actually the best kind of person that should do it, because if you hate musicals, you're not going to go with formula and stuff like that. And I said, well, I also hate formulas. And she said, but, consider this. There are some things, because theater is not about what's real, it's about, or realistic. It's about what's real in here. So if you had a piece of emotion that you could not get out in any other way, song and dance is how you put that on stage. And I took that little chunk of information and wrote a musical and got a scholarship. So it was weird. And I think it was a pretty good musical. But the whole point is to immerse your players in the game. And the game is not here, it's in here. And to immerse this in sounds and sights and everything, and accents, non-player characters, and realistic sounds. There is. I reviewed a thing called Ambient DM, which is fantastic. It's a great because it adds sounds at a whim. It's like a crash box or a sound card, they call it in theater, of musical. Or not musical, not necessarily just musical, but of things that make noise, and you can have the creaking of a door, the roar of a battle in the distance, the haunting wails of lamenting gerbils. And the other thing too is you can have heavy metal play behind someone as they perform a dramatic, epic success, and that'll get their blood boiling. That'll get their blood boiling, boy. Let me tell you what. The point is that your preparation, all these things that has been said thus far, are very important for a good dungeon master to get through a game with as little metagaming as possible. And then lastly, making rules decisions to ensure fairness and keep the game moving forward. Because no matter what happens, you will be faced with an arbitration because of some unclear rule and what they cannot do. It gives advice on collaboration during play, collecting inputs from the players as to what they prefer, what they don't like, which is important. It's because when you reach a consensus that is fair but firm, then it makes it more fun for everybody. And that's the point. You're not trying to prove that you're a god among men with the most brilliant dungeon mastery ever. I've said this before. It's about having fun. And that will be more impressive to your players than if you lay down the law and don't ever sway, never buckle. So there is a thing here called a little sidebar, which this thing is replete with sidebars. Tools for responsible play. Consent and comfort are important topics when role-playing for role-playing gamers, and many designers have created techniques to help facilitate responsible play. Some methods you can use are lines and veils, developed by Ron Edwards, and the X card, developed by John Stavropoulos. I don't know if he's Russian, but that's a cool name. Could be Greek. The term line and veil can give your table a common vocabulary for the concepts described in this section. A line is a hard limit to the actions players may take, such as we're drawing the line at torture. The group agrees not to cross a line and omits that content from the game. A veil indicates something that shouldn't be described in detail. The scene fades to black for a veil, or the group moves on to discuss a different topic, though whatever the veil is drawn across still happens. For example, you might say, we'll draw a veil across the scene as those characters head into the bedroom. Well, I think that's good advice, especially if you're playing with folks who have different sensibilities about things. Not everybody gets to play with lifelong friends and actual family members. Because I've always lived by the maxim is that a bad guy is not a bad guy. He's not a real villain unless he does villainous things. And the more villainous things he do, the more satisfying his demise. And that has proven to be true. Had a couple of baddies slaughter the entire inhabitants of a hobbit village, a very small settlement, maybe 200 or 300. Well, no, it wasn't 200 or 300. It was more like 70. It was small. So there was that, and that was a horrible scene. And the players got furious, as they should. But I made it clear to them, as I always do, that this is not me doing this. This is the villain. I wouldn't ever do this. I love hobbits. They're tasty. No, I hate movies in which, the thing kills the dog or the cat just for the the sake of doing so. So, and I'm not saying that hobbits or halflings are down there with those, but I'm saying that I despise the slaughter of innocents. I'm a freaking good guy, right? So there, that's the thing. There were a couple of times when, a bad guy was a bad guy. And if you get to see Goblin Slayer, if you know what I'm talking about, goblins don't just pillage, they rape as well. So how they keep their numbers up. And that's pretty graphic for a lot of people, probably most people. And you don't want to go into those kinds of scenes in detail unless your group specifically wants to, and then I would question their veracity. It's like, really, you want to know what the goblin does? That's kind of weird. However, bringing a veil across it, although the lines part is something that I don't necessarily agree with, because, well, as far as concerns the behavior of the players around you, that would be the thing. If it's like no one in my party is going to kill, children, for instance. And as an example, I was playing my wild elf named Inscabrius, Facilinelriel. He's just a fighter with a penchant for archery, because he has these little tiny arrows, because he's a little tiny elf. And he despises orcs, as the majority of everything, but he has a particular despite for them. And there were 4 orcs in a dungeon that we happened upon. We were trying to find some kidnapped children, and the paladin in the group was negotiating with these orcs to try and find the children, because they surrendered. They did not attack him, and he had not witnessed them do anything. And so he talked to them, and then Scabrius came up and he was going to put them down. And the paladin's like, we can't do that. They've done no ills to us. And I'm like, that is not even the point. And because Inscabrius did not abide, because they were the jailers for these children of this village. And he said, tell us where they are, and he says, and the orc was like, well, we'll tell you the ones that are left where they went. And Inscabrius said, where they were left, who, why, how many have you killed? Any of them? And the one orc kind of snorted. Not many, just a few. Just for lunch, And Inscabrius went berserk, and he held his water until the orcs told us where they were, where the survivors were. And he was like, okay, I'm going to kill them now. And the paladin's like, no, I gave my word I'd let them go. Okay. And you keep your word, Mr. Paladin, because I don't want you to do that. So he said, all right, you're free to go. And they were like, oh, all right. And they snorted. And they went off talking about how brave and bold they were, and how they were going to get the rest of the clan and come back and kill everybody. And they didn't make it too far. Because they had like 4 arrows each in the back of their heads that proudly belonged to Inscabrius, because that was a line. But my philosophy is that everything must be allowed because everything exists, and it's how the players deal with that. Now, I agree, like, if you don't want a player character in your party who is an actual rapist, or is an actual thief, even, someone who steals, if you're playing a lawful good campaign, you can draw that line wherever you want. So I think that's good advice. Now the other thing is the X card. You've got an X card. Place it on the table at the start of the session. Describe its use to the players. Any player can silently reject content they find upsetting by tapping the X card. Whoever's speaking then rewinds a bit and continues on, excising the objectionable content. Well, yeah, I agree with that, but if the game is that traumatic, now I can understand some subjects, like the how to butcher a 12-year-old. Yeah, that's pretty bad, and it probably doesn't need to go into detail, especially if you know how to do it. I'd be looking at that player like, do we need to call somebody? But if you're going to get upset at every little thing, and this brings a whole genre of pisses and moans from both sides of the coin about being triggered and being traumatized and all that stuff. And while I agree that it's very important to be sensitive to the feelings of other people, if it's going to upset you that bad, why even play it? Why even play the game? I know it's a lot of fun, but it's a good coping mechanism to learn how to handle all of your input, because you can't ignore the real world, their real world, by tuning out the stuff you don't want to hear. And that's just a matter of opinion. I know that a lot of people disagree with me. It's just a matter of personal philosophy, whether you want to shelter yourself or and this actually is another instance in which the game kind of bleeds over into reality, because mental health is an important issue. It very much is, and you don't want to run a game that's gonna make somebody go out and kill a bunch of nuns. I don't know why everybody kills nuns, and monkeys, and orcs. But I've known a lot of people. I've dungeon mastered for a lot of people, and I've known a few who got into the game, got into it a little bit too much, went out and did bad things. And you don't want those kind of players. So I think the line in the X card should be more for the actual player than what you play in your game, because it's like, if that's going to bother you, you probably shouldn't come back. It's such a touchy topic, or a tuppy topic. I like people. I love people. I'm a teacher. It's what I do. I don't judge a lot, especially my students. And when I have a gathering before me, I usually have a room full of people whom I consider students when I'm the dungeon master, when I'm the game master. So I love my students, and if they say something's wrong, then but if it's part of the game, it's like, dude, you may want to leave the room or something, because we have to discuss this issue. And if your character leaves the room, then you get up and go, and then we'll holler for you when it's time to come back in. And it's possible to do such things in a friendly way. You don't have to be a dick about it, is what I'm saying. I think I do definitely know that I'm saying don't be a dick about it. But if someone is blurring the lines between fantasy and reality, then there's a definite problem there that should be addressed in other ways. So yeah, the rest of the chapter goes on about the campaign length, which is reasonable. You can have it go to whatever level, and that's a huge bone of contention among myself and other taverniers here, is how fast you should level up. Because I don't know, it's a weird. That is the topic for a completely different video. So do have themes like in this it says like an icy plain, tundra filled with more difficult challenge, like not freezing to death, hobgoblin soldiers, giants, navigating seaways, battling devils. I mean, those are your themes. So in doing that, in picking and choosing a theme, you are kind of narrowing their focus, and that goes back to the X card and the lines and veils concept. Is if you have somebody who's like uber religious in real life, they may not want to play with devils and demons, and it's like, well, this is a devils and demons themed thing, and legitimately they're the bad guys. In all of mythology, demons and oni and inhuman spirits with malicious intent are all bad guys, always. And there have been times, there was a book that I read many decades ago called The Fellowship of the Talisman, where they happened upon the party happened upon a demon who had been chained and tortured because he was mal-shaped and tiny and made fun of, and he became a major hero in the story because he hated Old Scratch himself so much that he was willing to help the good guys. That didn't make him a good guy. That just meant that he was not fighting for the bad guys. Then it's important to have a welcoming environment, character creation, social splash damage. Now this is an interesting topic. It's important to take care of yourself and the other players in your game. Be mindful of your group's impact on the other people around you. If you're playing in a space that's not your own, respect your hosts. I always play here or at Lyric and Josh's house, but they play in the mall sometimes with their buddies and in a different game. So yeah, it is very important to be mindful. That's just good common sense. But they didn't have to put that in here, but it makes them look good because it is good. It's cool. They're cool people. My main contact for Paizo, Aaron, he is a wonderful human being. He's just a really good guy. I just like him a lot. And that is the way with most of the people that I have met at Paizo over the years. when they were just doing Dragon Magazine before all of the Pathfinder stuff came out. I was in there at Gen Con watching them grow, like the tiny little seedling, which, Dragon Magazine is not a seedling, but it certainly is the basis for a good company. And they grew it into what it is today, and they did it by being cool. Who thinks of that kind of crap? But they were very cool people. So they put in a number of things in this to help you prepare your adventure and to execute it. And the section on preparing adventures, they go over creating your own adventures and published adventures. I haven't done a whole lot of prefabricated modules, prefabricated dungeons. The Castle Amber was first edition, man, a long time ago. And it was one of the, I don't know, half a dozen or so that I've actually done. I always made my own. I created my own world right off the bat. Let's see, characters with disabilities. This is an important thing because it tells you how to handle, basically, and it's another one of their wonderful sidebars. Blindness, impaired vision, deafness, missing a limb, mental and chronic illnesses. These are all important aspects. I have played a blind character. I played I've done all these. I've done all these before. And it's important to know how to do it and what kind of penalties to bestow and bonuses in some situations, like a blind monk, because monks go blind sometimes. A blind monk would be absolutely impervious and immune to flashing lights and all other kinds of blinding, power word blind. The monk's like, oh yeah, pow, where it would, take other characters aback and so forth. Same thing with deafness. It's an impairment where it's hard of hearing or completely deaf, but it would also make you immune to chords and harpies and sirens, right? There's a silver lining in that big handicapped cloud, and I'm not making fun of handicapped people, so don't go there. I myself am somewhat impaired, so it doesn't mean that you have to be impaired to be sensitive to the impaired. You should be sensitive to everybody if you can. Missing a limb and mental and chronic illness, like Lyric is actually playing a character with narcolepsy, which is awful and hilarious and everything in between, inconvenient and handy. So it just depends on how you play it and use your imagination, right? Then it talks about treasure. One thing that I don't necessarily care for, although I know it's probably necessary, is the things like the encounter budget. And with Pathfinder 2nd edition, the experience points never ramp. It's always the same to level up every level. So if you want to run a well organized, I guess, a well metered game, then you would definitely want to be mindful of how many XP you give away per encounter. Although, nothing irritates me more than somebody comes to me and says, no, we should have got more experience points in that because this is, you're supposed to level up every 1.3 gaming sessions. And it's just like, I might have to penalize you a few XP for that. I don't like rules lawyers. I love it when people point out things that are not correct, inaccuracies and stuff, but when they get dicky, and that's my rule from earlier, if you remember, don't be a dick. You can say, oh, I don't think that's correct. You may want to look that up unless you've specifically changed it for that purpose. Like my rule about if it adds up to 20 or more, it's a critical hit with missile weapons. That's my own thing. And somebody says, no, that's not how it works. I'm like, it is here. And if they go along with it, then we're good. If not, they get another arrow. Then it talks about how to start a session, recap what happened during the previous sessions, establish where the characters are at the beginning, remind player they each have a hero point at the start of a session from page 507. Establish goals. The players should have an idea of what they want to do. Reestablish any goals the group already had. So, this is up to them, mostly. I don't like, unless they're taking specific orders from a commander, or if they have very specific goals set for them by higher up, then I do not reinforce their goals. I ask them to remind themselves, write down, your goals from last time, or for next time, what do you want to do? What do you want to do next time? Put down your goals. and stuff like that, and then commence adventuring. So that's an important thing, so they can pick right up where they left off with as little of a hiccup as possible. Okay, another thing I wanted to talk about was adjudicating the rules. If you don't know how long a quick task takes, go with 1 action or 2 actions if a character shouldn't be able to perform it 3 times around. Good advice. And this is good advice to carry over into other games as well, depending on the number of actions you get. If you're not sure what action a task uses, look for the most similar basic function. If you don't find one, make up an undefined action, adding any necessary traits, usually attack, concentrate, manipulate, or move. Also good advice. So the adjudicating the rules, it is very important for the game master to be able to adjudicate good rules and be fair. I know a lot of game masters who are very specifically harsh or stingy with things. For instance, when my character Gazaran created his flute, he hired wizards and did this because he wanted a magical flute that he could play and do things with it. And there were very specifically, like, I actually wanted to take and be able to blow a cone of frost with my flute, which to me is more reasonable than an electric friggin' guitar. But I wanted to do stuff like that, and, magic missiles, Bazirin, or what have you, just whatever. Lightning bolt is a good one, metal flute. So when I presented this to the dungeon master to arbitrate, he's like, okay, it can lightning bolt 3 dice damage once a day. I'm like, that's not at all what I wanted. He said, well, that's as good as it gets. Why is that? Because it's a flute. It's a flute. I went, okay. So I quested, and I got adamantium and gold and silver and spent hundreds of thousands of gold on this frickin' flute. And it does a 3-die lightning bolt. It's like, why can't I just, buy a freaking 2-handed sword or get a +5 bastard sword? He's like, yeah, you do that. So he was just being a dick. He was being an asshole. So be fair. Be fair with your players, and you won't have people running around with bad memories of you like me. So it talks about sharing responsibly. There are published adventures. There are Pathfinder Society, which is a really cool concept, and running in the modes of play, which is also very important to know how to do. And the modes of play are the combat, the encounter mode, the exploration mode, and the downtime. So knowing how to do that and keeping the game moving is real important. And believe it or not, the largest delayer of games is the downtime, because people just kind of meander about and they don't have anything to do. So downtime goes by quicker. Anyone who's ever been on vacation will know, right? That downtime goes quicker than your encounter time. So play that well, and by playing it well, I mean get from one thing to another and then get it over with. You don't have to come up with elaborate scenes and stuff like that unless the moment calls for it. And so yeah, and it goes over that here. Then it has exploration activities. It's got a section for each mode of play, and things like, if the group size is 2, then the total time is 16 hours that you have to account for, and the duration of each watch is 8 hours, and up to 9 characters, or up to 6 characters, which the total time spent is 9 hours and 36 minutes, which is interesting. And then the duration of each watch is 1 hour and 36 minutes. So that's why it's always better to have more people, because you can get more rest. Then it talks about, it goes over, all of the basics. Like I've noticed, I have read resting and daily prep and starvation and thirst. Most of these things can be assumed. Like once you wake up from your rest, you can assume that things are recharged and spells are regained and spell slots are regained and stuff like that. There is that. But if you need to, you got it. Then it goes over downtime, which covers the cost of living, buying and selling, long-term rest, retraining. Retraining a feat or a skill increase typically takes a week of downtime. So you can acquire new skills, but if you want to retrain, you can change your choices in this game, and I think that might be a rule that we can take into other games as well, which is what I love about Pathfinder. Is that you can, if you like, well, my guy is he never rides horses or anything else for that matter. He's a sprinter. Why do I need ride skills? And it's like, well, dump them, get rid of them. And that takes time, and there's a process, but it can be done. It's just like, you can do that in real life. I've seen bodybuilders completely go to waste, let their bodies go in pursuit of some other activity that becomes more important to them. And vice versa. I've seen people, like auto mechanics become bodybuilders, and bakers become auto mechanics, and so forth and so on. And they forget a lot of what they knew in the one skill, but they learn everything they can about the new one. And I don't think anyone loses everything that they've ever known about whatever. Like I've forgotten a lot of my Mandarin, but I still know a few things. Then, and a really important part of this chapter for me anyway was difficulty classes. It's up to you to set the DCs, and this has always been a thorn in my side. So this goes on to talk about it. It says the simple DCs are 10, 15, 20, 30, and 40. Straightforward. If it's untrained, it's a DC of 10. If the proficiency rank. Trained is 15. Expert is a 20. Master, 30. You'd have to be a master long jumper to hurdle that chasm. Or chasm is hovering over the chasm looking disheveled. A friend of mine is like a master of mispronunciation. Not on purpose. He fights bugbears. and we love giving him crap because he mispronounces everything. DC by level is also important because it allows you to get a general rule of thumb for what DC to do. If your character is 5th level, then his average DC, what's my DC for that is 20 because it says so here in the book. You don't have to stick to that. It's guidelines, remember, and so forth. So it gives you a really good idea of how to assign DCs to certain tasks. And also adjustments. If it's incredibly easy, it's -10 adjustment to the DC. If it's average, and it's whatever the DC is, but if it's easy, it's -2. If it's hard, it's +2. If it's incredibly hard, it's +10. So, and that's not +10 to get it. It's +10 on the DC. So if it started out at 30, really hard, then it's now 40. So there you go. So it has a large number of things, subjects. I'm losing my words apparently. Like sense direction, social skills, subsistence, tracking. It talks about all that. Then it has a section about rewards, what rewards you should give your players. And after reading it, I'm not a fan of formulas, as you probably know by now. I like to play it. I've had characters go from 0 to 10 in the level, not in speed, but from 0 level to 10, and only find a couple of items or maybe a handful of gold because of the situation. And then I've had characters at 1st level when they lucked out, and like I'm playing a 1st level campaign right now with Lyric, Josh, and Ian, and Lisa. And I'm dungeon mastering it, and at 1st level they lucked out and very brilliantly brought down a whole group of bandits, and their reward was great, a lot greater than it should have been for 1st level characters. But that's how life is. Sometimes you come across windfalls, sometimes you don't ever. So that's just how it goes. And while it's no fun to not ever, it's certainly more realistic, and I like the realism. Then it has a table on party treasure per level, which I disagree with to an extent. But if you want to stick to it, stick to it. I've used this before as well, and it goes on to treasure for new characters, the calculated treasure of character wealth recommendations. How much a character should be worth if it's like level 11. They should have 1 10th level item, 2 9th, 1 8th, and 2 7th level items with 500 gold pieces and a lump sum of 3,200 somewhere. So there's that. It talks about the environment. It goes over the environment. And this is kind of like, it actually reminds me a lot of the first edition Dungeon Master's Guide, which had all of the everything in it. Because it goes everywhere from, it talks about urban environments, plains, underground, what kind of climate and precipitation, temperature effects, avalanches, natural disasters, which are always fun. I had an epic level character actually killed by an avalanche. Okay, granted, a devastation beetle caused the avalanche, but the devastation beetle did not kill the character. He could have probably fought it, but the avalanche itself killed him, and he was up there. So yeah, natural disasters are very challenging because you know this is the power of the earth, and unless you've got, because the thing about it was he had earth meld or stone meld, so he could have gone into the earth, but he had already used up his allotment of uses that day, and he couldn't do it again. I did not do that on purpose. That was totally a random roll. That he was just in the wrong place, at the wrong time, and died at like 30 something level. Then it has a section of hazards: detecting a hazard, triggering a hazard, damaging a hazard, disabling a hazard. Experience points from hazards, which is important because they don't have a challenge rating. And then it has a really cool list of hazards, like the slamming door. And if you remember, if you've seen the television, the miniseries Rose Red, the Stephen King story, where the guy had his fingers cut off by a slamming door. Well, if his head had been in there, it would have been his head. Electric latch runes, scythe blades, spear launchers, hidden pits, and stuff. So hazards are traps of some sort, but they're not necessarily set. So you can't call it a trap if it's not set for you, right? I guess. I don't know. Then you've got complex hazards like quicksand and spinning blade pillars and blankets, drowning pits, a wheel of misery, telekinetic swarm traps, lava tubes, so forth, and so on. The wheel of pain. All in all, this is another 5X thing because I don't recall seeing the illustration of a single goblin in there. But the amount of things that it covers, I'm apparently at a loss for words, is comparable to the old first edition Dungeon Master's Guide, which for it just being a small section is a pretty big accomplishment. So 5X it's a great book. I am really looking forward to playing more of it. Although there's not much time these days to do so because everybody's in freaking quarantine. So with that being said, this is the Pathfinder 2nd edition core rules book. It goes for $59.99 or less. You can probably find it for less at paizo.com, and tell them we sent you. They might let you buy something if you do. So on that note, I am your host, Dr. Jeff Goins, wishing for you to want for nothing but adventure. And on the behalf of the entire cast and crew, I almost left them out, which I am not ever wanting to do. We wish for you to want for nothing but adventure, because we do. We all do. Because if that's all you want for, then your life is pretty good, and that's what we want. We want you to have fun. And at first I feared it, then I charged. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Let the